All right, boys and girls, welcome once again to the Real Life on the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. Hope you're having a great week. Wish I could tell you that I've gone fishing. You know what? No, I did go fishing Friday. I did go fishing Friday. Uh, Funny story. I meant to go because I need to start putting some videos, some reels together. I also want to bring some videos for my sponsor, Douglas Rod. Typically, for those that are not familiar with how that works, usually you record videos, you put them on your social media, you tag them, but you can also record videos and send it to them, which is sometimes what I do. And then put them up on their social media so they'll have original content and then they'll tag me on it. So I've been doing that because I haven't been able to fish, and fishing has been tough with this scorching hot weather. So Friday, surprisingly enough, I thought it was going to be super hot, which it was at 11, but from like 6 a.m. to 11, it was a nice breeze. It was cloudy. It was excellent. When I got to the boat ramp, I realized I left my GoPro in my backpack and I left the backpack at home. And as soon as I realized that, I still got in the water because I'm already there and it's like almost 2 hour drives back home. I'm not going to go back. But I thought, man, today's going to be the day that I'm going to catch this huge bass, and it's going to be this would have been this awesome footage because this thing is going to be jumping out of the water. It's going to have that hook band that, those rod companies love to have on their social media reels and all that and pictures. And sure enough, man, I was throwing a drop shot and I hooked into this 22 and a half. That thing must have jumped out of the water like 3 times. It would jump, go underneath the kayak. You can see the rod bend completely, like almost the rod tip almost went underneath the kayak as well. And I was like, man, there would have been great, amazing footage. It was like it took me a couple of minutes to kind of like calm that bass down and get it on the boat. And I was like, I got the pictures, so you can see it on my social media. I'm not lying. I did catch it. It's not like that story of the one that got away, but I was like kind of bummed. It's like I knew this is gonna happen. If I would have brought my GoPro, I would either skunked or just caught like 5 dinkers, 12 inches, which is funny because that's what happened to me on Possum Kingdom for the tournament of what was it, the Hobie or the Bassmasters tournament at Possum Kingdom. It was, I'm sorry, it was so hot, my GoPro just went off, shut off around 10. And like 15 minutes later, the biggest bass in my tournament was 22 and a half. I caught it on top water on a whopper plopper. And then again, it would have made a great video. But again, the picture is there. I submitted the fish, so it's a true story. So, anyways, we're going to have a great episode for you today. For those that are new to the program, remember you can follow us, me and Dan, on the Bass Kayak and Beer social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We have 2 podcast episodes a week. The Real Life, which airs every Sunday, and we have a live show on Thursdays, and the Advanced Kayak Angler, which airs every Wednesday. And that is with Dan Perry. He's the host of that episode. And what Dan does, if you don't know already, he does tips and tricks to help you improve your kayak fishing experience or your bass fishing experience. Last week's episode, Dan did a really short 30-minute video, but really, or video and podcast, I should say, really concise information on how to use a wacky rig. So look for that. And if you do happen to hear us on your MP3 formats, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we do appreciate it if you can leave us your 5-star reviews. It does really help out with the growth of the podcast. But without further ado, I'm going to bring my next guest, Gerald Smith, the other G-Man. How's it going, buddy?
Real good. Always good.
Thank you so much for taking the time for the podcast. I met you last year at the Lone Star Throwdown. We were hanging around with, you got a Jungling. Good for you, man.
It's my favorite. As I once lived in Philadelphia, fell in love with it.
Oldest brewer in America, supposedly.
Yes, sir.
From Pennsylvania as well.
Yes.
Too. So
anywhere you walk into a bar in Pennsylvania and you say, "Give me a lager," this is the only beer you will get.
Jungling, for good reason. But anyways, I met you on the Lone Star Throwdown last year. We're hanging around. We're on the same circle with Brandon Mays, that bass fishing dude. Oh my God, Charlie Wells,
Charlie Wells
and small time fishing. I forgot his first name.
Jr.
Junior. Which is Junior is not his first name. That's just his first name, right?
Uh, I'm a Trevins, maybe. I've always called him Junior.
Junior, I know. So Junior, if you're watching or listening, sorry about that. We forgot your first name. But anyways, Gerald, for those that haven't met you, haven't had the pleasure of meeting you on the water, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living? What got you into kayak fishing and fishing in general?
I've been a longtime chef, pretty much my whole life. Grandparents owned a restaurant and bar for over 20 years. Dad was a chef, went to the Culinary Institute of America, a whole lot less in the kitchen and a whole lot more helping people get their kitchens in order from start to finish. It's a lot better on the family. It's a lot better on yourself. And fishing is something that I've always done without really thinking much about it, though. I grew up literally right next to water in 2 different states. My dad is from Memphis. My mom is from Seattle. And it's been a thing that I guess maybe I honestly took for granted as a kid. Fished a lot, but mostly fishing for groceries, was not competition. It wasn't targeting anything specific. And then, like most people, got bigger, got stronger, played sports, got a job. The thing that happens to most of us, fell off of it, and then really reconnected back to it when I moved to Dallas, Texas about 6.5 years ago. Oh, I can't hear you.
I apologize. That's what I'm about to ask you. Like, how long have you been living in Dallas, Texas? So, how's Texas treating you for the last 6 years? You like it, love it, hate it?
I really like living in Texas. It's a different life, especially from somebody that spent so much time in major metropolitan cities. I've been very fortunate to live in New York and Miami and Philadelphia and Chicago, and Las Vegas. So it couldn't get much different than living in Texas, but so far, so good. You're still
Sorry,
muted.
I'm still muted. How does it compare fishing here in Texas to any other place that you lived before? Like you mentioned so many places you lived before Texas.
So growing up in the Northwest, it's like polar opposite. One of the first things that I did when I moved to Texas and decided to start fishing again was ask someone, when is fishing season? And they looked at me completely confused. They had no idea what I was talking about. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, when am I allowed to fish? And they're like, today. So that was like, oh, wow. I'm used to having an ice out and, a limit. But primarily what we would fish for in the Northwest is going to be things like trout, salmons, kokanees, sturgeons, steelhead trouts, even, any of the panfish that we normally would have here. But you're looking at smaller bodies of water, moving bodies of water, a lot of even fly fishing. I can say that I can fly fish in theory. I haven't done it in about half my life, but I have. And, when you tell people in Texas, I grew up trout fishing, I think they think of like the little stockers that we do, a couple of times around the DFW area. But living in the Northwest, I mean, you can get 40-pound trouts.
Yeah, that's
I've caught a bigger trout than I've ever caught a largemouth bass.
Yeah, over here, I think the Guadalupe has some nice, like, resident trout. I know the Brazos River, they stock them with some decent trout. I mean, there's some fingerlings there, but I mean, there's a couple of nice. I've caught a couple of nice trouts up at the Brazos River below Powellson Kingdom. Haven't fished Guadalupe though, but let me ask you about your background, because I was really interested. We were talking the pre-recording. You are a kind of like a corporate chef or something along those lines. I'll let you explain it more, but it's crazy, your background as a chef. It was so weird how there was a lot of similarity. I forgot the word there. Similarities between being a chef in the space that you are, because you're not just a chef, and bass fishing. So let's talk about, first of all, what is the definition of your job as a chef?
Oh, well, today the role I would serve more is in consulting. So anyone that is interested in either opening a restaurant from concept, I don't even have a kitchen yet, recipe develop, P&L analysis, food cost analysis, sanitation, training, kitchen design. I could do a number of those things. I was very fortunate. I went to the best culinary school in the world, the Culinary Institute of America in New York, and then worked for some of the biggest restaurant groups in America, including Michelin star restaurants, 1, 2, and 3. And we had talked earlier when I was trying to kind of explain, we had talked about television as a chef and as Top Chef specifically. And you brought up the thing that even I actually never thought of, but it's the perfect way to explain it to fishermen. It's the way a tournament fisherman might be looked at and a YouTube fisherman might be looked at. So that is a pretty serious parallel in the culinary world too. It's a little different over the last maybe 5 years because media, just like in fishing, media is just so big. But when I was coming up, it was really looked at like you're a serious fine dining chef or you're a TV personality. And then there's the rare few that do crossover. Like I was fortunate to work for Mario Batali and Jean George, a number of other, big time celebrity chefs, and they can do it, but it's largely because they already proved it.
Yeah.
So now they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I started binge watching Top Chef, which is a great show. I really enjoy it. I mostly enjoy watching Padma Lakhish. I think she's awesome. Not only is she beautiful, but she has a great personality. I remember the first season that they had that show, they had a supermodel hosting the show, and she was horrible at her job. Like she was great as a supermodel, she was horrible as a show. And I believe that show would have just canceled if it wasn't because they changed that Padma. They put in Padma and replaced the other host. I can't remember what the other host name was, because other than that, it was Tom Colicchio, and I forgot Rachel. I think it's the other the redheader chef.
Colicchio is a great example where we're talking about. Colicchio he's the real deal.
Yeah,
Colicchio was the upper echelon New York City fine dining. He opened 11 Madison Park, which went on to be, #1 restaurant in the world many years later, and also now has transitioned into television and personality being a key role, even though he does still own a number of restaurants.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of that show, and I've kind of learned about culinary arts and famous chef behind it. But it's funny how that's true, and I think you can say that about a lot of activities. Where you have your YouTuber ambassador, and then you have the one who kind of grinds and does the real job. Kind of like tournaments, you have your YouTubers, not to discredit them, but they're more entertainers, while you have the tournament anglers who are just hammers at catching bass fishing. So how does bass fishing or kayak fishing kind of help you with, because I know for a fact, like your job as a chef, and even if you're not in the kitchen, still building a restaurant or help build the restaurant has to be one of the most stressful jobs that we've never heard of or never think as being stressful.
I've opened, I think, 16 restaurants at this point, and the worst parts of being a chef that you see on TV are not that far off of what the reality is. And working, the standard hour of a chef is 12 hours. That's a 12-hour day, period. That's the baseline. We're not even going to talk about it. But a lot of chefs are going to work 14, 16, 18s. And when you get into restaurant openings, I've opened restaurants in hotels where I lived in the hotel and literally went upstairs and slept for 4 hours and came back and just kept going. And bass fishing is the thing that can just take all of that away for a little while. When you're at the helm of a restaurant, you wake up in the middle of the night panicked because you're wondering did I get my fish order in? Tomorrow, will I get to the restaurant and there will be salmon at my door? There's not a lot of things that most chefs have found to just decompress and wash it all away. And bass fishing is definitely an amazing thing to do.
What do you love more about bass fishing and kayak fishing?
the solitude. It's great. The camaraderie keeps you coming back.
Yeah.
But the solitude of that launch in that early morning, your solo paddle and a sunrise on the water, it's like a magical
Yeah, I was
moment.
about to say
Yeah,
magical.
absolutely. And I've tried to express that to some of my friends that don't fish or don't get it and have no interest in it. I'm like, I can't even explain to you just that quiet moment on the water.
It is, man. And I've had great friends. I have great friends that just are not interested. They think of it as boring. It's kind of like that reel that has been going on around social media about this. The actor who used to be in Terminator from Skynet, the one who.
Is it
Anyway,
the one where he explains to him on
why?
Monday why?
Yeah, why he loves that.
It's
That's
perfect.
great.
I said that to my wife.
Yeah, that is exactly. I'd show that to my wife. That is exactly why. It's just the fact that you're kind of in control of your decisions. You don't know if they're going to pay off.
Yeah.
But again, the solitude, just like the last week, I was at Possum Kingdom and just going out there on a quiet little vessel that doesn't make any noise and just seeing deer just come up like right next to you, just because they don't feel threatened by you.
Yeah.
Just the birds, the fish jumping, that sunrise. It's just magical, like you said. There's something beautiful about it. So,
And
other than
it
just
just
catching
gets
fish.
in you and you can't shake it. And
Go
my
ahead.
PK first day of Bassmaster was so bad, so horrible. Not a single bite. Didn't even see any fish at all. And so I ended up obviously having a bad tournament, but I couldn't shake it and I couldn't sleep with it. And I told my wife, I need you to get the girls up and get them everything to school by yourself on Thursday because I got to go back. I woke up at 3:00 in the morning, got in the car, and drove back to Possum Kingdom just like for like a little bit of redemption.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You got to do it. By the way, shout out to Richie Martinez who's watching. If he's still there, Richie, thanks so much for commenting. And again, for those that are watching, listen, if you have any questions that you want to ask myself or my special guest, Gerald Smith, please feel free to ask. We'll do our best to get those answered. I wanted to touch on something because you mentioned, because of your culinary background, you have kind of this love affair for Japanese culinary, but it's kind of spilled over into fishing in a kind of like similar but completely different way. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, chefs and knives, those are two things that they just go together. Can't do one without the other. And I just fell into the love of the craftsmanship of high-end Japanese knives many, many years ago. And, had the opportunity to spend my honeymoon with my wife in Japan for a little over a week, traveled to a district that is known for the making knives and a family that's been doing this for many, many, many generations, going all the way back to making the samurai swords for shoguns. And it's just been a thing that taught me about the intricacies and the details of craftsmanship and care. And somehow that connected also with me for bass fishing. And I fish mostly JDM products because, in my opinion, I'm always trying to look for something that's just a little bit different than everybody else is throwing. If I'm going to compete and it's going to get me one more bite, then that's the direction that I kind of try to go in. And over the last couple of years, things have become more accessible, but also things have started to cross over where we've started to have, a number of controversies.
Yeah, and I know we're beating a dead horse here, but I still think it's relevant. Now I did a podcast about ICAST in general, and that subject came up. I was actually this week I was a guest at the Paddler's Playbook, and we touched in depth on it. But I wanted to get your perspective. What was that?
I said, shout out to Drew.
Drew, yeah, shout out to Drew Turney. Great podcast for those saltwater guys, for anybody in general. But I love their podcast. Go check them out. Paddler's Playbook with Drew Turner. You can find him, I'm sure, on every podcast streaming platform. But I wanted to have your perspective, because I say my opinion on it, and I haven't talked to anybody yet about this subject that's a huge fan of JDM products. How you just mentioned you're a fan of JDM products. How do you feel about what you just mentioned? Some of the controversies that we've had lately with product developments.
I think it's really tough. I think that there's a big difference in the ripping off of companies and people. Now, I have known some people that have ripped off small, tiny, build individual builders. That's very bothersome. But when you get into the bigger companies, it just gets so much tougher because there isn't a ton of unique things. But what we had spoken about earlier is if you have the buying power of a Berkeley or a Rapala or a Z-Man and the infrastructure and marketing, then you understand that if you're going to put something out, people are going to see it. They're going to gravitate towards it. But people that know the other product are going to call you out on it. And I think my biggest issue comes where these companies make it seem as if they just came up with this revolutionary idea. I was sitting on the front of a bass boat and it struck me from the heavens. And it's like, well, that's been out in Japan for a decade. And you're giving no love, no homage, no credit to these other people. And then when you get called out on it, it's, well, we did get some inspiration from them. It's like, I think you only said that because you got called out. But you could do what Z-Man did with Evergreen. You could be one of these companies that does reach out to the smaller Japanese builder and builds a relationship with them to bring this unique thing that they concepted, R&D, blood, sweat, and tear in their garage to bring that to the masses.
Yeah, especially when it's sort of innovative product. So we had the one of the biggest ones, and I think there was a situation with Rapala, but the one that got the most attention after ICAST was Berkeley's Nessie because it won an award.
Yes, and I have a G flag somewhere around here that I've had for a while.
So and I do agree with you on in exactly and everything that you said. I'll give you a perfect example, and you and I were talking about this. So Z-Man, they coined the chatterbait, right? Before the chatterbait, there was a bladed jig, and if anybody is interested, you can Google that story somewhere. The article is somewhere, but it's a really interesting, learning experience, in my opinion, for marketing directors. So Z-Man, the chatterbait or the bladed jig was designed by a pro angler that all of a sudden started having success. I think he won a couple of big tournaments with this design, and he started selling them. From what I understand, there wasn't a patent law, and there was something I think in the 90s. It wasn't. There was no patent on it. Z-Man could have just swooped it in, made a copy of it, and sold it. What Z-Man did was go to that person and made them whole. They were like, okay, we want to buy this design from you. I'm going to pay you for this. They paid him. He sold the design, and then Z-Man patented that design. And so they kind of that's why you see Z-Man coming up every year with the new chatterbait.
Mm-hmm.
So the name chatterbait actually belongs to Z-Man. It's a bladed jig. But the learning experience here is nobody ever accuses Z-Man of copying, or even if they're soft plastic with elastic, that it's an innovative product. They didn't invade the bladed jig, but they paid the rights. They made that person whole. And it's funny because we learned, and this is all of us, we learned from other people's experience, but they make a mistake. We don't learn from other people's experience when they have success. Like, we take that for granted. When somebody screws up, they're like, okay, you know what? I can't do that because that person did that failed. But we don't take lessons from the people that succeed. And moving forward to what we've seen with Rapala and Berkeley, I love, on one hand, I'm a consumer. And as a consumer, I always feel every single one of us as consumer, not just in bass fishing, whether it's cars, whether it's buying furniture, whether it's buying household, whether it's buying groceries. We see things and we complain about things getting cheaper in the sense that they're not made as good as they were used to, as our parents and grandparents had them. The quality of the product has declined, but yet the price has gone up. And when I look at, for example, the Nessie from Berkeley, I see a product, and nobody has thrown it yet other than their pro staffs, right? But looking at it and talking directly with people at Berkeley, there is a upgraded to the design from the flag. Mainly the hook keeper that's not in the flag, and the feathered tail fin, which supposedly makes it glide better, and some plastic inserts to make it glide straight. So to me, I'm saying, okay, you improved on the product. It's still not your innovation, but you
Yeah.
improved on it, and you lowered the price because the flag is $46, I think, plus shipping
Something
and
like
handling.
that.
I'm assuming it's gonna be like $50,
Yeah.
and then now you have the Berkeley Nessie with $12. I'm not gonna be a hypocrite. Like, that's what we want as consumers. That's what we always complain about. Oh, the quality is worse and the price is higher. Well, guess what? Now the quality is better and the price is lower.
Mhm.
So as a consumer, I'm gonna buy the Nessie, that because I don't have $50 to, because if you want buy one, you're gonna have to buy two or three, because
Yeah.
one eventually you're gonna break it off on something.
My
So
argument to that, though, to
yeah,
play devil's advocate,
yes,
is that you don't need it. Like
what
no
do you mean?
one, like people always say, I can't afford to have this thing, but you don't need it. You've caught fish for the
Yeah,
last however many
yeah,
years without it. Like to play devil's advocate, I always think of it like that.
yeah. That's true.
Most people don't drive a Dodge or don't drive a Ford Raptor. Most people drive an F-150. Like, but you still function in life
Yes.
without the Raptor.
No, and that's a good point. Like, this is not a necessity. This is a
Yes.
hobby, right? So when you're on a hobby, you want the best out there. So yeah, you're right. But now I'm just like, okay, I can't. First of all, they're sold out. Um, Second of all, they're that expensive. I'm not gonna shell that much money out, for a bait that I've never used. Now $12, I'll do it. But I do think, and this is where I stand with you on this. And again, we go back to the Seaman thing, and even Seaman with Evergreen, they partner with the Jackhammer, right? And I don't know the story of. I'm assuming the Seaman already had the shadow bait, so I'm assuming this was more like a design of
The direct.
yeah, Evergreen, and then they merge and they work together. So Seaman has a great reputation for being a stand-up company. And what I think marketing directors, and maybe whoever makes this decision, I'm assuming they're not bass fishermen,
No,
because any
they're
bass
trying to make
fisherman will
money.
tell you, yeah, any bass fisherman will tell you, don't do that.
Mhm.
If you would have just, even if it costs you more money up front, work with the designer, the innovation of flag, whoever it was, and try to make him whole. You give him a contract. Hey, you're gonna be our product designer for at least a year.
Mhm.
Let me work together. Let me give you credit. Let me work something out where you save yourself as a company, knowing that people are gonna look at you and say, "This are the stand up company." They
Absolutely.
did the right thing.
No one
They
turns their back on you if you
No
do that.
one's, yes. And even though they're going to make money with all this, because eventually people are going to buy them,
Yeah.
there is that reputation, and you can't put a price on reputation. I think that's a problem a lot of times with marketing directors today. Is like, you're not valuing, you're valuing dollars, and the problem is it comes off as arrogant. And
Yes.
when you do that, even if you make money, you get that stigma of, this is the name, this was your what the name represents. And
Mhm.
we're not that far off from the Chapo, which is a direct copy of the Whopper
Yeah.
Plopper. So it now becomes repetitive. It now
And then if you're
becomes,
a company that hasn't made any baits in 50 years, then all of a sudden
exactly.
you throw out 5 baits and 2 of them are knockoffs.
Yeah.
You had enough money to do some innovation.
You could even sell that Nessie for like $25. People would still buy it because it's still half the price of the
Yes.
flag. It's still available. It would
Yeah.
still be available because
Yeah.
mass production versus one guy doing it. So, and use that money to kind of balance the cost it would give you to do business and bring this person along in with you, and
Yeah.
avoid the backlash of it. Because
Because
as
I
long,
100% understand
yeah,
making everybody makes a Cinco. We get it. That's not, I don't believe that's the argument. I think it's the argument is when you act like you created it. Like we saw that Nessie and multiple pro anglers stand up there and say how innovative and amazing creative they were with this. But the biggest guy on that brand has a video up where he's holding a G flag many, many months before he ever used it.
yeah. And listen, I'm guilty of it. If you go to my YouTube channel, I had a video about the Nessie. Now I didn't even know that's another thing that I want to be fair too. You know, the company that makes JDM, the Gentleman Grow Design. So that's what it's called. If I'm now, have never heard of this company.
Most people haven't. It's literally
Now, like
one
that
small
company
Japanese
went
builder.
viral. Yeah, that company has now gone viral, and it has now created this cult following because of what Berkeley did.
Yeah.
So in a way, that person still benefits, but it wasn't organic. It was just something like a byproduct of doing things that come up sneaky. I
just
also
give them
think
a little acknowledgement, and everything is fine.
I also think that winning an award makes it worse.
Yeah, so much worse because the award is for innovation.
Yes, that made it tamed. Like they would have been better off not even submitting that for an award.
Yeah, they wouldn't have sold any less.
Yes, they made it worse by winning an award,
and it could that be a fantastic bait. It very well could be.
Yeah,
pay homage.
And that goes back to, and again, this money. You know what they say, money talks and something walks. I forgot. I don't want to use the other word, but it's one of those things where it's like, you know, the American Sportsman Fishing Association, whatever it is, the one that governing body that hosts ICAST, they should have like some standards saying, okay, I'm not gonna give you can't enter this product for our innovation design award, because you're not innovative. And
there's companies that are going to experience it in the other direction actually soon, because I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe the jackhammer patent is expiring soon, like within the next year or two.
Yeah.
And the law only is that they can't sell direct blades in America, but they sell them in Japan. I have a JDM direct blade to head that I got. That it wasn't sold to me. It was a part of a package that I received. So it gets around that. But pretty soon, all those guys that have been doing it for years and have their design ready to go are going to flood backwards.
And again, that goes back to what I'm saying. That, and I didn't even think of this until you said it. Look at the jackhammer. So now Seaman has brought out once again a brand new chatterbait. You think like how much changes did you make to the chatterbait? But they brought the Evo, which is supposedly an upgrade for Seaman, but it's cheaper. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Even if it's not an upgrade, it's still cheaper. But what do you think that is? Because that patent, like you said, is probably, and I don't work at the marketing director. I don't work directly with Seaman, but why is the jackhammer so expensive? Because they had displayed with Evergreen. They made a deal with Evergreen, and that costs us money. So it's like, you know what? We have to jack up the price in order to kind of compensate. We still bought it. Everyone still buys the jackhammer.
Yeah.
So
and it becomes like a good thing.
Yeah, it becomes a good thing. And now that what you said, like the patent on that jackhammer is kind of expiring. Well, now the Evo comes out and supposedly cheaper because they're not tied to not tied to that deal with Evergreen. But again, they did the right thing. They avoided the backlash. They raised the price, and we still bought them. So,
everybody should be allowed to make money. It's just transparency helps everything.
Yeah. Not try to silence the voices or pretend that it's not a thing. It makes it even worse. But let's talk a little bit about your social media, because I see 3 the Hard Way, and I always think about that Western movie. But what is 3 the Hard Way? Is it based on that movie, or was that your favorite movie?
Well, it's kind of for me personally, it's an intersection of a bunch of things. So in fine dining restaurants, the peak of fine dining is 3 Michelin stars. So 3 Michelin stars is very hard to get. So getting 3 the hard way. Also, 3 the hard way is money, power, and respect. And then for me personally, also under the roof that I'm in, it is me and 3 women. So it's an intersection of many things. It's always kind of stuck with me. It's an old 70s movie. It's something that just came around and around me for many years and just stuck.
And is that how do you bring that motto to your fishing experience or life in general?
then it kind of also leans on the money, power, and respect thing. And that is, everybody can interpret the weight of each one of those words differently for themselves. But I think being respected within your community, working your butt off, having some status and some money has never hurt anybody.
What do you want to accomplish now that you've gotten, you're growing in the kayak fishing industry? Every year seems like, as time passes, you're more deep into the kayak fishing community, investing in the kayak fishing community and investing in your kayak fishing experience. Where do you go from here?
For me personally, the goal for me is to become a part of the kayak fishing community where I'm taking from it and giving to it. So the guy that you want to call because you're going to the Brazos or PK or Ray Roberts on Saturday, because us fishing together gives us both, something good. It gives us both a great experience. Being able to help with a few of the different organizations that are fortunate to be affiliated with. It's also the same way. Whatever I can do to help them, hopefully there's some reciprocation there as well. My top of the line thing is just give the community what I can give it and hope that the good parts of it are reciprocated back.
What do you love most about the community? Not just fishing, but just the community in general. What has been some of the best experience you've had?
It's I would say to date, the best thing that I've done, and I actually was recently talking to Duke, who, as we know, runs the North Texas Bass Trail. I primarily fished the Texas KBL this year, partially because it came out on the schedule of theirs came out first, and the fact that I wanted to fish a bunch of waters I've never fished before. So fishing Southeast was definitely a goal. But the biggest benefit of fishing that trail was the fact that you're getting 175 to like 210 people per event, and half of them or more are staying at the same RV parks. So getting literally the entire RV park and just the fellowship, camaraderie, having a beer, and somebody's always cooking food and just sitting around, shooting it, sun up to sundown, and then going in and trying to kick each other's butt has probably been the best aspect of kayak fishing that I've experienced so far.
And I always give props to anybody that kind of like decides, hey, I want to fish the Texas Kayak Bass League primarily, especially if you're not from that area. Because I guess because it's primarily Central Southeast Texas. But I compare that league to any national trail. I mean, the hammers. I mean, Brian Scarberry. I don't know if J.R. Maccabee fishes it, but that's another hammer. I think he's fished a couple of them. Rolando Nandin, we all know.
He fished most of our events, I think.
Andrew Jacobson, Jeff Isham. I mean, there's some great anglers like that. I'm sure there are a couple of trails up in Tennessee, that they can put a claim as being some of the most loaded with talent trails. But I mean, I put Texas KBL.
Yeah, that's as good as it gets.
It's as competitive as it gets, man. There is some talent, and that's not including who they don't fish it primarily because of other responsibilities. But Guillermo Gonzalez and Matthew Scott, imagine if those two were fishing. That would even make it more interesting.
I mean, when Hobie came to Caddo and you got 200 people in that Hobie, 60 of those guys are Texas KBL fishermen, and you're going up against them every time. And I fished North Texas, Northeast Texas, Slay Nation, and Texas KBL. And Texas KBL is putting out the most people, and the competition there is real tough.
Yeah, really tough. And no disrespect for North Texas Kayak Championship. Again, Duke Tran runs the trail. Matthew Scott fishes some of it, Guillermo Gonzalez. So it's a pretty loaded trail as well.
Yes,
a lot of great talent over there.
And I can sleep in my own bed though for those events, which is it's a plus and a minus.
Yeah,
being able to sleep in your own bed is always great. But then you do lose that thing I was talking about
The
when
edge.
you're putting 100 guys at the same campsite. That
Yeah.
camaraderie thing is the only bad thing. But that's a fantastic trail.
I've gone to the point where I enjoy fishing like national trails when it's outside of Texas. Um, but I understand, especially when like usually I'm rooming with Rolando Landing and some of the guys from the Texas Sky Bass League. And if anybody knows Rolando Landing, he's the consummate professional.
Mhm.
And he is always, from day one of practice to lines out on day two, he is zoned into what he's doing. There's no
Yeah.
let's go to this bar or pub, have a few
Yeah.
beers before the tournament or doing practice days, cornhole tournaments. No, he's like out in earth,
Mhm.
even on pre-fishing, 5 a.m. getting up, being at sunrise at the boat ramp for practice, leaving at sundown, going home, set up, think
Yeah.
about what you accomplished that
And
day
it
on practice
shows.
days, and it shows in the result. Like he is like, and I sometimes feel like I want to be here for the fun too, but I understand like
Yeah.
when you're investing 250, 260 on a tournament entry
Yeah.
fee plus the Airbnbs plus the food, it's like, man, there's you can, I mean, if you have that money to blow out and donate for tournament winnings, then yeah, you can
Yeah.
go and have fun and hit up a couple of bars and just stay up till late. But if you
I
want to
don't
like,
push it that far.
yeah,
I'm in
yeah,
bed at a decent hour. I'm relatively sober.
yeah, if I'm late, if I'm past midnight before tournament, it's because I'm still rigging up.
Yeah.
That's it.
I
So
will never forget. I met Rolando for the first time at Hobie Cato, and me and Brandon Mays are talking to him, and he's like, "Man, I just didn't. It wasn't working for me." And in my head, I'm like, "I just had a great pre-fish. I'm like, I should be
he
all right
won.
tomorrow." And then he goes out the next day, and he does exactly the thing that we were talking about that night, not working.
Yeah,
He's part of the reason, like I have live scope on my kayak. He's part of the reason I just took it off and left it at the house. And I didn't bring a jerk bait rod out and didn't bring any jerk baits out. And then when I heard how he won, I was like, oh man. So the next time I saw him, I was like, man, what happened to what we talked? Like you were like, I had such a bad day, they just weren't hitting. And he's like, man, they really weren't. I swear they really weren't, but it just clicked for me. And I'm like, man, I wish it would have clicked for me because my Cato did not turn out the way his did.
I've roomed with Rolando the last 3 national trails. He ain't giving juice. Like he won't. Like he'll help you out. He'll try to pump you up, and if you're having a back practice, he'll be there. And to kind of lift your spirits. But he ain't giving no juice. I'll tell you that much. He keeps everything tight as far as what information he does, and he's really consummate professional. Always
Yeah.
he's always like, let's make sure we talk or something that we're not breaking any rules. Like
Yeah,
make sure
definitely.
we go by the rules. And one of the things that I respect about Rolando that unfortunately people learn the hard way is if he sees like, hey, beyond that point, you're not supposed to go. There'll be, and I may be guilty at some point of doing like, well, I can fish around, close to it. I'm still, Rolando Landing is like, if people see you within 5 feet of that boundary that says you can't fish
Yeah.
from that area, in their eyes, and what's going to be said out there is that you were fishing a mile in to
Mhm.
that and you should be disqualified.
And there goes
He's
your
always like,
reputation.
it's always like my reputation is like, if
Yeah.
that's where I can't fish that area, I'm going to stay as far away from it as I can while still trying to find my fish. I
Yeah.
says it's kind of like, pushing the envelope, pushing like, this is the gray area. This is the gray area. How far deep can I get into the gray area?
Yeah.
He's the opposite.
I
How
recently
far?
listened to Gerald Swindle say
Yeah.
there's people that read the
Yes.
rules not to break them, and people that read the rules to see, how far they can push them.
Yeah. And Rolando is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And again, that comes down with like no tournament winnings is worth your reputation. Just
Not at
like
all.
selling baits is not worth your reputation if you're doing the right work, kind of going full circle with that. Gerald, I've had you for about 45 minutes and I do want to be considerate of your time. And I do appreciate taking you guys taking the time to come up to the podcast, talk about it. By the way, next week I'm going to have another chef, Lance McWhorter.
Everybody keeps saying, "Have you met Lance? Have you met Lance?" And I haven't. I've had a couple of social media interaction with him, but it looks like he's a hell of a fisherman and good chef.
Yeah, from what I understand, we're going to be talking about.
His
Well,
new
we're going to be
shop.
talking about some chef. Him as a chef might do something to get us canceled and share some good bass recipes.
I did a whole podcast on Paddle and Fin about cooking fish.
Oh, you did? When did you?
I mean, on Paddler's Playbook. Sorry.
Oh, Paddler's Playbook. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Hour.
And I didn't know you were working as a chef, because that's kind of like where I want to have my conversation with Lance once he's here. I want to talk a little bit about fish recipes. Last year I went to South Padre Island, and man, I wasn't fishing out of a kayak. I did a guided fishing thing, but we wrecked them on the tiger trout, sea trout. I don't know what the name of it. Speckled trout.
I've never fished the Gulf, so I am not the one to ask.
Oh my God, redfish and trout, man. We were hammering redfish and trout, and some of the recipes I came up with, even Chris Castro from Next Level Fishing TV shared some recipes with me from redfish. Oh my God, that's some of the best fish I've ever tasted.
Delicious.
It's amazing.
And everything doesn't have to be blackened,
Yes, not everything. I actually smoked. I brimmed some of the trout and smoked them for I brimmed them for 2 days, smoked them for 8 hours, something like that. I can't remember, man. That it's something good about when you took it from water to your table.
Yes, sir.
Not talking about bass, people. Relax. I'm not eating bass. Not that I'm against it.
Bass aren't bad though.
I just love them so much that I don't want to eat them.
Yeah.
But I don't. I'm not gonna shame anybody for doing it. So who am I to say this fish gets to live and this fish we get to worship?
Yeah. There's a lot of people out here feeding families with bass.
Yeah, there's a lot of. So if that's I just stick with the 2 or 3 pounders. Leave the 5 pounders alone.
Yes.
But other than that, I'd rather eat crappies. Crappie is so
100%.
much clean meat.
So much better.
So much better meat.
So if you ever have I was just about to say, if you ever have Brandon back on, me and Brandon have had an argument, and he swears he believes that largemouth are better than crappie.
No,
I think
it's mine. And I mentioned it on that thread that we had. It's like that blood vessel that runs right down the middle. Mm-hmm. If you don't cut that blood on the flesh and split that fillet, it's not good. And even then, it's not going to be as good as crappie, in my opinion.
Yes.
Maybe some people like that fishy taste, but
I agree with you.
You're the chef, so
I 100% agree with you.
Done.
Walleye and crappie, I think, are the best freshwater.
Now, Brandon works in Canes, so if we have a question about who makes the best fried chicken, I'll take his advice. He works at cybersecurity, by the way. I'm not saying he's the cook there. But we love Brandon Mace from that Bass Fishing too. Go check him out on social media for those that are listening. But Gerald, where can people follow you? Where can people, where can people follow you? Learn more about the Three the Hard Way, and tell us what's next for you as far as tournaments and content creation, if you're doing that as well.
Next year, we're going to try to step up the content creating game and just start to do some more interesting things and kind of follow the trails a little more in depthly than I definitely did this year. But I'm Three the Hard Way on all the social media platforms. I primarily use Instagram personally, play around on TikTok a little bit more of recently. And, you can catch me on any of those or out there on the water, any of the trails that are coming around. The next tournament that I fish will probably be Hobie. We have our championship and Hobie at the same time on Sam Rayburn. I'll be getting some fun fishing in there in between. I didn't fish enough of the North Texas trails to make their championship this year, which I believe is this weekend in Athens.
Yeah, that should be. I love that. Great fishery. Tough on summer though, but great fishery. But good luck on Sam Rayburn on both tournaments. I wish I could have made that. I'm going to be on my 10-year trip anniversary with the wife. I am hoping to make the Lone Star Throwdown. That's the one tournament that I really enjoyed. But even though it's competitive and even though it's 200 anglers, it's the only tournament where I'll go pre-fishing, but I'd rather just hang out, have a couple of beers,
Yeah.
enjoy my time, and not worry about what I place.
Yeah, I almost forgot we all
That's
stayed
what.
together for
Yeah.
the throwdown.
Yeah.
I was just talking to Duke about it. He's finalizing it. I'm a part of the Mariner sales team, and he's gonna get it dialed in so we can have another great event pulled off.
Best native bass power hour up in Lake Fork, the 20th
I'll
of
be doing
October.
it.
I'm
I'm
really
a swing
looking
bait
forward to
fisherman,
that.
so I can't miss that one. And I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna bring swim baits and just swing for the fences.
That I love that format of the tournament. Never fished it. I know Chris Morales got ahead of us this year. The first tournament didn't count for AOYs, but the first tournament was it Fayette?
Yes.
They had the bass
which
power
was
hour.
I mean, we caught. I feel like we had 205 anglers, and I'm gonna say we caught like 1,500 fish. Like
Yeah,
it was
Was
like
it
70
Fayette?
degrees. Yeah, Fayette was it.
Fayette.
It was like 70 something degrees in January at his
Yeah.
power plant, so the water was like 79. That was a good event.
Hopefully we get to those weather soon, man. It's crazy.
Too
When's
hot.
the last time I can't do it, man. Like I'm done by 10.
I haven't been on the water in a few weeks, 3 weeks. I've hit the bank here and there just real quick, but it's just so dang hot.
It's hot, man. Like Friday, I got lucky.
I might try to go to Texoma Sunday.
Texoma, meet up with
Carlos
Torres, Lone Star Kayak
Lone
Fishing.
Star
Go follow
Kayak.
him as well. Great dude. Carlos Torres is a great dude. Had him on my podcast. Need to get him back on the podcast. Great dude.
Yeah, if he's not out, saving the world's electricity grids, then I'll try to reach out and see if he's going to be up there.
Yeah, great dude. And that's a good thing about here in the kayak fishing community. Brandon Mays, Charlie Wells Jr. from Small Time Fishing, Carlos Torres, you all great people. And it's so enjoyable when I go on the water and get to see whether it's a tournament or fun fishing. It's just great.
That's the best part about fishing.
Most underrated part.
Yeah. Like you hear so much more controversy in the big boat world than you do in the kayak world.
I hate it when people say, this controversies or what's happening in kayak fishing tournament. It's bad for the sport. I'm like, it's bad if you let it be, if you let it affect you. Yeah, you're not obligated to fish in the tournament. Like whatever happens on a tournament doesn't affect my kayak fishing experience.
Exactly. You don't have to fish tournaments at all.
And even if you do, like I still go for fun. Yeah. Like I don't only have fun, I actually have more fun when I'm not fishing a tournament.
It's true. It's a lot easier when you're looking at the clock and checking the live well and all of that.
So anyways, I wanted to give you a shout out. I wanted to give you a time to shout out your sponsors. I know you already mentioned Mariner Sales. What else? Any of the companies out there that you want to shout out?
Yeah, well, like I said, first and foremost, Mariner Sales. If you need anything in the kayak world to get you out for a float or a tournament, they absolutely have it. Exxon Lures, Blue Storm, PFDs. It's one of the things that I preach religiously. Is please wear your PFDs.
Yep, I agree.
Someone recently, passed away from drowning, and we just don't need that to happen if you can prevent it. And recently, I just started working with Real Sportswear, shirts, buffs, hats. They're largely in the salt world. Got the connection from Drew from Paddler's Playbook. So we're going to try to bring all of that salt life to the freshwater. And that's where I'm at right now, fishing out of a Hobie for the Mariner sales team.
Mr. G, man, thank you so much. Gerald Smith, go follow him through the hard way. I really appreciate you taking the time, man. And for those out there watching, listening, remember, go check out my sponsor, Douglas Outdoors. Douglas Outdoors got some of the best rods in the market. You can go to the website, check out what stores carry Douglas rod next near you, and you can go check them out. So thank you again for tuning in. If you're listening on our MP3 formats, whether it's Apple TV or Spotify, do us a favor, give us your 5-star reviews. Remember, we also have the Advanced Kayak Angler for tips and tricks to help you in your fishing experience, hosted by Dan Perry. That's every Wednesday morning, So again, wear your PFDs, people. If you're going to be on the water and you're going to have a couple of beers, just make sure you drink responsibly. Again, be safe, especially with this hot weather. Stay hydrated. Make it back home to your loved ones. So peace out, everyone.